This video is about relationships. Here you certainly have seen the topic there about Mrs. Thomas, that's Supreme Court Justice Thomas's wife, sending communication to Ms. Anita Hill. That is certainly something of great interest to everyone, because of the fact that there are certain forces that are happening here that actually explain quite a bit about relationships. Here I want us to be very scientific when we talk about relationships, which is the reason why I have given you the formula for relationship as density equals mass over volume. So what does that mean in a relationship? Well, what that means in a relationship, first let's give you the definitions of mass. Mass here is a substance that has no definition at all, but is affected or influenced by gravity. So what does this mean? Well, let us take a look at Mrs. Thomas's behavior here. On Tuesday, the 19th of October 2010, this lady expressed herself, stated that she had called Miss Anita Hill about the incident between herself and George Thomas that happened 19 years ago in 1991. Listen carefully. The date was 1991 and it's been 19 years, and Mrs. Thomas called Miss Anita Hill. Talked about this incident on the 19th of October. So here we are looking at time. The time 1991, 19 years ago, and on the 19th. So now if you were to take the one from behind 91 and put it right in front of the 9, you get 19, 19, 19, 19. Okay, so 1991 becomes 1919, and then 19 years ago 19, and then on the 19th of October, so we'll have 19, 19, 19. There is a message here. What is that message? Well, you got to ask George Thomas's wife, but it simply implies something is going to happen, and Mrs. Thomas knows what it is. So let's go to the other definition now, the definition of volume. Volume is what gives you dimension in terms of composition. So volume gives you dimension in terms of composition. So in other words, volume is the denominator of this ratio that we have as density. Density equals mass over volume. Mass is the numerator, and volume is the denominator. So as we say here, the volume gives you dimension, and the dimension then tells you what the composition is. So what's the composition of the relationship that's between Mrs. Thomas and George Thomas? You know, this, we have to look at what's happening in the home of the Supreme Court Justice and his wife. There is certainly something happening there that caused Mrs. Thomas to take the action that she initiated. What it is, again, I'm not going to talk about that. They know, but I can tell you one thing for sure. Within the next 3 years, we hear something. Again, I will just stop right there. So let's go into your own personal relationships now. Thanks a lot, Mrs. Thomas and Miss Anita Hill, for you guys to actually introduce our topic here about relationships. Now, if you are in a relationship, how would this formula help you? Now, we have to bring in the concept of mathematics and, of course, physics in order to understand human relationships. Density, again, like I said, is mass over volume. How is your own relationship working? Well, often when you are in a relationship and you have a large volume, in other words, there is the ability for you to create attractions that usually too much for your partner in that relationship. For instance, if you are overly excited about many things and your partner is not that excited, again, there's not going to be balance in the relationship. So again, if the two of you are in a situation in which you are both balanced in terms of the attraction that you have, the gravitational forces that you have between you two, then certainly there is going to be an amicable partnership. In other words, the scale is always balanced. But this is important because in any relationship, the mass of what you have, in other words, what is there to attract the other person, must not be overweigh. In other words, it must not be too much for the volume. What has to happen, in fact, the opposite has to happen, in which the volume that you have, which is the composition of your attraction towards the person, that has to be much more than the mass of what is there within you two. In other words, your numerator must always be smaller than your denominator. The mass must always be smaller, which is the kind of content that you have in terms of the gravitational pull, the attraction that you're going to have. Let that be a little bit smaller than the volume, the composition of what you are, the essence of you. Let the essence of you be much more than the attraction that you have. So when the essence of you is much bigger than the attraction that you have, then the relationship is going to work, because then you are able to be very tolerant, you are able to be very patient, you are able to forgive, you are able to not take simple things as major things. This is what is essential in any relationship. So my co-host and I will be talking about this Sunday on the 24th of October on our Blog Talk Radio. So please tune in, and then you can ask questions and you can participate in this discussion. Certainly she will help me to simplify what I've just said. I know it's very difficult to explain certain things, but I'm sure that my co-host Queen Dama will be very, very eloquent, because she and I have talked about this week. She in fact wants to have this as a topic of discussion. So I thank you very much for being a part of what I do. I know that you do appreciate what I do, and we certainly appreciate you as well. I'm Professor Momo Nama.